Well, hey folks, this video is going to be short, but it's important and timely. Robert Tellis, the former Las Vegas public official accused of murdering investigative journalist Jeff German, has decided, like I predicted, that he's going to testify in his own defense. You know what? We're going to explore the potential reasons behind this decision and the risk that he's taking by doing so. Will his words influence the jury for good? Or will it just further stack the cards against him? The state's rested, and we'll learn his defense in the next 2 days. Did Robert Tellis kill Jeff German? Well, hello everybody and welcome to Profiling Evil. Thanks so much for joining us. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and please share us with your friends and give us a thumbs up. So let's jump into this. The state of Nevada has presented compelling evidence against Robert Tellis. All last week we were in trial, and yesterday the state rested. This former county clerk in Clark County, Las Vegas, is accused of murdering journalist Jeff German. The evidence paints a picture of a premeditated attack, allegedly motivated by Tellis's anger over German's reporting, issues that ultimately exposed Tellis's office and what many people believe was also the reporting that led to his pre-election bid defeat. Now, this was a brutal homicide where the predator hid outside Jeff German's home in the bushes, waiting to ambush him. German had taken the day off, was just relaxing, had just gone to dinner, came home, and he opened his garage door and walked out, only to be attacked by an then unknown assailant. The murder was close up and personal. A knife was used, and it was gruesome. Now, German was stabbed 7 times, 4 times in the neck. The killer actually slit his throat. And then he was stabbed 3 times in the torso. Now, he had injuries on his hand, defensive wounds, and other injuries. But this crime scene screamed of a personal nature between the predator, the killer, and the victim in this case, German. So let's review the evidence in the case and the information that I think is really going to create a difficult challenge for Tellis and his defense team. Number one, the surveillance video. Now, authorities have gathered surveillance footage from around the German home. The footage is pretty broad, too. It allegedly shows, and we've seen images of this, a person dressed in a wide-brimmed hat, a reflective vest, some really distinctive shoes, carrying a bag on his shoulder, walking near German's home around the time of his murder. The state and many of its witnesses claim that this person matches the description of Robert German, and even introduced other evidence like pictures to support that. Number 2, the DNA evidence, and this one is a monumental mountain for the defense to climb and to somehow break apart. Investigators reported finding DNA evidence underneath German's fingernails that link Tellis in massive percentages to this crime scene. Specifically, again, Tellis's DNA was found under Jeff German's fingernails, suggesting this incredible struggle that took place. And if you didn't catch the testimony of those early examiners, go back. It's really worth watching. And number 3, the evidence, clothing and the vehicle. Investigators recovered a vehicle that matched the description of the same kind of vehicle seen in the surveillance video near German's home. Now, the vehicle was also traced back to Tellis's house and to Tellis. Additionally, investigators reported finding pieces of clothing inside Tellis's home that were similar to the clothing the suspect in the surveillance footage was wearing. That is going to be a big one. Now, number 4 that they're leaning on, German's investigative reporting of Robert Tellis. German had written several articles that were critical of Tellis's office antics, focusing on allegations of mismanagement and misconduct, including that relationship that he was having, according to all reports, with a coworker, someone that he supervised. Now, the prosecution is arguing that these reports were so damaging to Tellis's career, including influencing his reelection bid, that provided a motive for Tellis to commit the murder of Jeff Gehrman. Number 5, behavioral evidence. And you know how I like to talk about behavioral evidence. Tellis's actions before and after the murder really came into focus in this trial, and the prosecution has highlighted his suspicious behavior, things that were leading up to, during, and after the murder, including attempts to disguise himself and his presence near Gehrman's home. Now, additionally, there are claims that Tellis attempted to mislead investigators and to destroy evidence, and into question came his responses after Gehrman's death had been publicly reported. Well, these pieces of evidence form the backbone of the state's case against Robert Tellis, aiming to establish his presence at the crime scene, his motive, and his actions surrounding the death of Jeff Gehrman. So now let's talk a little bit about the defense, because the defense is going to recall a number of witnesses, and they're also going to put on a few of their own, ultimately, according to media reports, putting Robert Tellis on the stand himself. Now, testifying in court is a significant decision for anybody that's involved in a legal case, especially a murder case. But again, you're going to remember that I actually predicted this while on Court TV with Vinnie Politan and in subsequent videos that I did here on Profiling Evil. Let's just take a look back.
There's something about politicians, you know. At one point, he convinced people to vote for him, Mike. So I guess he's going to try to get 12 more to vote for him as well, but vote not guilty.
That's exactly what I'm thinking, Vinny, is this is a guy who has been successful at being a chameleon or telling people the things that they want to hear. He obviously, with the idea that he wants to talk to the judge and represent himself and challenge issues in the courtroom, whether he's got a background or not, he clearly believes that he's the smartest cat on the block. And this is the kind of guy, I believe, that's going to follow the footsteps of an Alec Murdaugh and say, I'm going to take the stand because I am so good at what I do that I can convince this jury it wasn't me.
Tellis's choice to testify or remain silent is particularly complex given the fact this is a homicide. The stakes are incredibly high. Now, this little discussion we're going to have right now kind of explores some of the reasons why these alleged killers might choose to testify in court. It's just my opinion here, but it's looking at the legal aspects, the psychological aspects, and the strategic factors that might be influencing Robert Tellis's decision to testify. First and foremost is this legal consideration, a right to a fair trial. In many countries around the world, the legal system is built on the principle that an accused person is innocent until they're proven guilty. That means every defendant has a right to defend themselves and to get a fair trial. That also includes the right to testify in their own defense if they choose to do so. However, the decision to testify is fraught with risk, and it could be, some reward. But it has to be carefully weighed by the defense team. So, number one, there needs to be a right to be heard. And the defendant needs the ability to either accept that right or not be penalized if they choose to remain silent. Testifying is going to give Robert Tellis a direct opportunity to present his side of the story. It's a place where he can explain things, he can refute allegations, he can offer perspectives on events and the evidence. Now, it's going to be interesting how he offers a defense on why he decided to cut up his shoes and his hat and hide those in little bags in the house. Anyway, I believe it's the only way that Tellus believes that he can create reasonable doubt that he didn't kill Jeff Gehrman. Remember, this guy represented himself early on in this case. He's the kind of guy that thinks he's the smartest person in the room. And I believe that he believes that people are going to think he's really a good guy. They voted for him in the past. I really think he's been successful convincing people in the past and hopes to convince them now that he's not a killer. He has to consider the risk of being cross-examined, though. One of the most significant risks he's going to face is the fact that a prosecutor is going to be able to ask him questions after he gets up and testifies. And the prosecutor is going to try to undermine his credibility. He's going to highlight inconsistencies in his testimony, or he's going to try to provoke some emotional responses that might make him appear guilty. Now, I suspect the prosecution team was absolutely thrilled when Tellus's team announced that he was going to testify, because it gives them the opportunity to expose him in a few places and then bring back witnesses to rebut or to impeach things that he might say. Now, I'm sure his defense team has clearly outlined the pitfalls of testifying, but keep in mind, this defendant knows the legal profession, he knows what court is all about, he knows the importance of his testimony, and he apparently is choosing to do it anyway. We got to think about psychological factors. You know, the psychological state of the accused can play a significant role in their decision to testify in a criminal case. This might be Tellus's moment in time to express himself, perhaps present himself in a way that he might be appearing to be honest to family members or close associates, people that he wants to kind of keep the narrative going that he's not guilty. And again, let me state, he's not guilty until he's found guilty at the end of this trial. Now, he also has a need for self-expression, and some defendants, apparently Tellus, feel a strong need to tell the story their way. I think they believe that by speaking to the jury, they can help the jurors to understand that they are human beings, that they're being set up for this. They're not just some faceless killer out there. Now, I think this has the potential of backfiring, especially if he comes out being really arrogant or seems defiant. So it's going to be really interesting to see the relationship that occurs when the prosecution cross-examines him. But all of this is going to place him in a position where the prosecution can cross-examine him. They're going to be able to put in rebuttal witnesses. They're going to be able to do things to disprove what they believe might be false statements. Now, defendants testify because they want to somehow demonstrate that they're honest people. They might take the stand because they want to tell the jury and the world, hey, I got nothing to hide here, which could sway the jurors to be more in their favor. But on the other hand, remaining silent might lead some jurors to speculate that they're trying to hide something. So it is really a tough decision to decide whether to put that defendant on the stand or not. But if he goes on the stand, you got to watch closely because he has to have psychological resilience. He's going to need to maintain composure under intense pressure, particularly the cross-examination process. Anyone who is mentally or emotionally prepared to handle this might pull it off a little easier. And I guess that's my question for you is, do you think Tellus fits this characterization? But beyond these legal rights and psychological factors, this guy has to think about what the state's case is. Is it strong or is it weak in their eyes? And if so, if it's weak or strong, they're going to have to make this decision. Then they may try putting him on simply to capitalize on the weaknesses that they think have come out in the case and create some form of doubt in the jury's mind. Keep in mind that Tellus will testify about all sorts of things, yet this guy can still remain silent if he chooses. So this is going to be an 11th hour decision. But if he does testify, Tellus is going to be given a chance to shape the narrative the way he wants it told. He's going to be able to address key pieces of evidence. He's going to be able to offer alternate explanations. And above all, he's going to be able to humanize himself or dehumanize himself in front of the jury. Now, if he's well prepared, he could convincingly evoke sympathy from the jury. He might get them really swung over to his side that he's being set up. And this could potentially lead to an acquittal or lesser charges in this case. But I think the decision to testify in his particular case is fueled entirely by his need to somehow preserve his position of trust, not only in his family, but perhaps his pre-indictment public image life. And ultimately, the decision to testify is going to be made with his defense team, but he's the one that pulls the final trigger on this one. Now, his team is experienced defense lawyers, and I'm sure they're providing him with the best guidance they have. They're giving him an assessment of the case as far as they're concerned, and they also understand Tellus's ability to withstand cross-examination. Now, this guy's not coming in blind, though. He will have been thoroughly prepared for this through mock cross-examinations. They will be looking at everything they think the prosecution is going to bring up. And then, as the legal, psychological, and strategic meanderings of this case unfold, a final decision is going to be made. And in the end, again, this decision to testify, while complex and highly individualized, is Tellus's choice. Just like Alec Murdaugh, if he chooses to do this, he's going to have to pay the penalty or reap the benefit. So I want to just pause for a moment to share a CBS video that kind of talks about Gehrman's colleagues and their reaction to his death and the things that they did. Now, this thing is 2 years old, but you would have thought that it was created yesterday. Let's watch that.
When investigative reporter Jeff Gehrman was murdered in Las Vegas on Labor Day weekend, there was an extraordinary twist to the story. Police arrested a sitting public official with a possible motive. Gehrman had exposed wrongdoing in that official's office, and staff at the newspaper where Gehrman worked then had to do two things at once: cover this giant story, this potential scandal, while at the same time grieving their co-worker's death. His murder, in fact. Now they're talking about it for the very first time with our Mark Strassman.
The sheriff tells me Jeff's dead. And it's just a punch in the face.
Glenn Cook's awful news came in a phone call. At the Las Vegas Review-Journal, known locally as the RJ, the executive editor's leading investigative reporter, Jeff Gehrman, was dead.
As distraught as I am, not even remotely considering the possibility that he's been murdered. Not remotely.
But Rhonda Prast got nervous. The head of the paper's investigative unit noticed homicide detectives had announced a briefing in Gehrman's neighborhood.
And I immediately called Glenn, I think Jeff's been murdered.
Awful had morphed into evil. Gehrman's body was found lying outside his house, stabbed 7 times, 4 in the neck.
A good man, a trusted ally in the newsroom, a good friend to a lot of people here.
Did it run through your mind right away? Who did he tick off?
It's a line of people from here to Los Angeles. Over the course of his career, he covered a ton of bad people who did a lot of bad things.
A reporter columnist from Las Vegas.
Jeff Gehrman was the paper's bulldog investigator. For 40 years, he ran down gangsters and grifters, spotlit public corruption, exposed the shadowed venality behind the neon of Sin City.
Jeff was never afraid. I would have done anything to protect Jeff, so. Sorry.
No, I get it.
Yeah, he was fearless. Glenn and I did talk that night about his work. I said, tell us. I told Glenn, tell us.
You thought tell us right away.
I did.
Hello. I'm Rob Tellis.
Robert Tellis was the Clark County Public Administrator. It's a bottom-of-the-ballot office administering wills and estates. But Gehrman had reported Tellis bullied his employees and had an inappropriate relationship with one of them. Tellis lost his re-election. David Ferrara helped coordinate coverage.
The statements that police gave were a little bit odd.
We still stand by the idea that it is an isolated incident.
3 days after Gehrman's murder, police released this video of their suspect, hard to miss in triple-digit Vegas heat. He wore a wide-brimmed sun hat, blaze orange clothing, and gloves, walking in Gehrman's neighborhood the morning of the murder.
We have a video of Robert Tellis walking down the hallway in his office, and it's a oh my God moment for people in the newsroom.
Especially when police asked the public's help finding this maroon GMC Yukon, their suspect's car. A tipster told the paper it belonged to Tellis.
Then someone types in Tellis's home address, and Google Street View camera of his house has the GMC Yukon parked in front of his house.
When we saw the Yukon, especially in the Google Street Maps photo,
Bingo.
wow, unbelievable.
Through their shock, RJ reporters and photographers staked out Tellis's neighborhood.
Your coworkers are solving the murder of one of your other coworkers. The whole situation had its own sense of absurdity.
We have to get in action mode. We have to get to work.
This photo shows RJ employees in their newsroom, listening to police scanners and detectives closing in on Tellis.
We're watching and waiting, and we wait, and we wait.
Police searched Tellis's house. Among their evidence, a mutilated sun hat, sneakers with bloodstains, and his DNA at the murder scene.
We post our story, and it's a hell of a story. A sitting elected official is a person of interest in the murder of an investigative journalist in the United States. It's unbelievable.
5 days after the murder, Tellis was arrested. Photographer Kevin Cannon got this shot for his friend, Jeff Gehrman.
My preparation and experience allowed me to get that photo, and I know he'd be proud.
Almost simultaneously to the time that the ambulance doors close, I get a phone call from the sheriff, and he says, Glenn, I wanted you to know that Robert Tellis is in custody and under arrest in connection with the murder of Jeff Gehrman.
The headline on the paper's front page, a stunning arrest in the death of a journalist.
Was a big part of the motivation here, we got to do this right, the way Jeff would have wanted it done.
Absolutely. This is the kind of story that Jeff, would have grabbed a hold of and never let go.
The RJ's now in a First Amendment fight. Police seized Gehrman's laptop and cell phones as evidence. The paper wants to deny them access. It's another part of Jeff Gehrman's legacy here, but hardly the only one.
We will have a hole in our newsroom. I don't think our city will ever grasp how much he did, but our newsroom will.
Oh, boy, Mark.
Wow.
Your story gives me goosebumps and chills. I mean, it must be surreal for his colleagues to immediately, when they heard about his death, have a suspect in mind and then actively work to make sure that that suspect is arrested. I've never heard of a story like this, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the best the paper has researched, it had never happened before, Gail, where a sitting public official had murdered or allegedly murdered a journalist. And you're right, there are a couple of different things going on here. They're investigating the story, and yet they're also grieving the loss of their colleague. And there was also something else, Gail, which was a fear factor. At first, when they didn't realize who even a suspect was, all they knew is that one of their colleagues had been murdered, and so they also wondered whether they were potential targets. One of the reporters was telling me that every time she opened the garage door of her house, she half expected to see a suspect in it. So anyway, the paper really did some remarkable work, given what they were also all going through emotionally.
Yeah, well, the paper has a long legacy of powerful investigatory work, and I'm sure they're not going to be shrinking from that duty going forward, even in the face of this terrible tragedy.
Yeah. So clear what Jeff meant to them, too.
Yeah, because even as tragic as this is, he's still leading the way.
Exactly.
Well, I'd love to know your thoughts about this one, folks, and whether this guy can pull off a convincing story if he testifies. Now, what would you be saying to him if you were his defense team? Bottom line is, this might be the only Hail Mary pass left in this bucket of tricks the defense has. But it may pay off, and I'd like to know your comments, and I'd like to know your thoughts, and I hope you'll put them down below. And make sure to check out Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, please look for Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. Hey, thanks for all your support. You can find ways to support us at profilingevil.com, and we certainly do appreciate it. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.